Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, home care in the senior living industry.
And I'm Corrie Sirota, clinical social worker and author of Someone Died, Now What? A personal and professional perspective on coping with grief and loss. Well, hey, Matt.
It's Corrie.
I got you. Hey, Matt, did you go... are you going tomorrow to the St. Patty's Parade?
You know what? I don't know, but just the fact that we're even talking about the parade is just great news. I know they had a good one in Hudson today, despite the rain, and tons of activities this week. So we want to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. You know, Corrie, a little trivia with a name like Delvecchio. My mom always, every March 17th, made me wear green because she's of Irish and Scottish descent. So I've Irish blood in my DNA, a lot of Irish blood in my DNA. So she reminds me that every year on St. Patrick's Day.
Look at what you learn on Life Unrehearsed. Amazing. Okay, well, moving right along. Welcome to our segment on helping moms and dads. That's where we provide guidance and support to the sandwich generation. We've had a number of interesting guests covering a wide array of topics. And most of them, if not all of them, help families cope with the challenges of the aging process. This week is no exception. Matt, what do we have going on?
Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit more about home care because it really is gaining in popularity as our population ages. It's been stressful for the sandwich generation, the kids and spouses. And we wanted to get some expert advice about providing additional support for our loved ones. The healthcare system, it's there. Home care is there through the CLSC, but it is very challenging for families. It's usually never enough. And so typically, though, we would be talking about help for seniors when we're talking home care, but there's also a need for home care support for the younger generation as well. So to tell us more, we're pleased to have Beth Cytryn on the line. Beth is the founder and president of BethCare Senior Services. Beth has over 12 years of offering education, support, and home care services to families in Montreal. And on a daily basis, and I've seen this firsthand with Beth, she manages her team of caregivers and she works closely with her clients to ensure security and quality of life and to relieve their families of stress. Beth, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Hello.
Hello, Beth.
Corrie and Matt, thank you so much. This is such an honor. Thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure. It took us a while to get you on, and we're very happy to have you, Beth. You are a wealth of information. So I guess let's start with the fact that, lately more and more people prefer to age at home. And why do you think that is, Beth?
Well, I truly believe that most people prefer to age at home because home feels safe, home feels secure. It doesn't matter what age we are. We all like that feeling of safety and security. So most people would prefer to be home where it's familiar to them and where they have the ability to make their own choices. I mean, that's a key thing in life. We all like to have the control of our own life.
No question about it, and what you're saying makes perfect sense, Beth. I want to actually ask a little bit about or explore caregiver support. When should we be looking for additional help?
In everyone's life, there are usually countless signs and symptoms that are personal to each individual, right? So one thing I do know is that there's always trigger events. That would be a clear sign that more assistance is needed at home. If we can be honest with ourselves, if we would see when this assistance is going to be beneficial to enhance the quality of our life, that's when we would hire assistance in the home. And adding quality of life is really what home care is all about, right? Because every time we have help in our home, it will add to our quality of life.
I completely agree, Beth. We see this, both of us, in our world, and quality of life is important. I think people will do their best to support their loved ones, but at a certain point in time, if it becomes too much, the stress is too much, even family dynamics, family relationships, drug and alcohol abuse is even sometimes a result of some of the stress. And sometimes you really do have to step back. Exactly what you're saying, Beth, for quality of life. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corrie, and we're talking home care with the founder and president of BethCare, Beth Cytryn. Beth, We want to talk about some of the traditional home care services and not so traditional, but let's start with traditional. What are some of the more popular home care services that are provided?
I would say the most traditional home care services would be assistance with activities and functions performed on a daily basis. So that means dressing, eating, personal hygiene, bathing, housework, laundry, definitely assistance with medication, that is key, shopping, assisting with appointments, schedules. Those would be the most traditional services that I could think of.
Certainly very clear and makes sense to me. I'm actually really interested in the non-traditional home care support services because I don't think we talk about this enough. So can you review a few of them?
Definitely. When we speak home care, we think of the elderly. But, of course, home care support is not just for the elderly. There are many people who are in need of home care services for a variety of different reasons. So there are people that are living with depression. They need companionship. They need guidance. There are people living with mental health issues, and post-operative care is definitely very common. There are people that live at home that need 24-hour supervision. So that's not traditional, right? When somebody needs help with every act of daily living. Those would be a few that I can think of for non-traditional services.
You mentioned, I think, a very important one, post-operation. And with the stress being put in the healthcare system, Beth, you see this firsthand. It seems like they're just pushing people out because they got to free up beds. And as a result, they're going home, perhaps unprepared. And I often get asked, Matt, do you know any residences that will provide convalescence beds? And it's very challenging. And what happens is families are scrambling to find help at home. And I think you brought up a very important point, Beth, because that's something that home care companies like yourself can do. If you're worried about post-operation or hospital discharge, you could be there to support those families, can't you?
Well, for sure. And one thing that I really try and stress with post-operative care is that it's always better to place more care and cut it back than not have the care when it's needed, because the last thing we want is an extra visit to the hospital. So I strongly always suggest to people, if there is an individual coming home after an operation, put the care in place, and then we can cancel the care if needed. But it's better to be safe than sorry.
I'm so glad that you're raising these points, Beth, because I don't think people recognize and think about how this is an ounce of prevention. What's that expression? The ounce of prevention is worth its weight in gold. And so you mentioned the 24-hour care. Can you talk a little bit about the mental health piece, or even the younger people that might need it? Because I think we need to be very clear about what kind of services you can provide.
So, it's hard for me to know everything that's out there, but I can only tell you about my journey. And I've had several clients where they just, I'm working with a young man now. He's 60 years old, and he just needs help with structure, organizing his life, assisting to make appointments, make sure that everything is followed up in his life, making sure he's eating healthy, that there is food ordered. So home care, what we try and do is help individuals with each of their own personalized needs. So we come into the family, we sit down with the family, or sometimes there is no family and it's a social worker that needs to organize things. And we work together to build a care plan and a structure so that individual can live independently.
We're talking with Beth Cytryn, founder and president of BethCare. We're talking home care. Now, Beth, we have to head out to traffic. When we come back, Beth, we wanted to ask you about, you're providing so many different types of services, so we thought it might be a good idea to, I guess, pick your brain in terms of what questions should we be asking when we're looking to engage the services of a home care company.
We're talking about the fact that as the population ages, there's increasing demands for home care. Almost 1 in 4 Canadians are caregivers. Sometimes it's way too much and we need additional help. So thankfully, we have Beth Cytryn, from the founder and president of BethCare, on the line with us, guiding us through this whole process of understanding why home care is important and how do we access it. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, if I needed to engage the services of BethCare, what questions should I be asking? What would be, I don't even know where to start.
Well, you have to start by picking up the phone.
Okay.
You need to start by calling different home care providers. There are a lot of basic traditional questions that you can ask. You know, how long have you been in business? What qualifications do the caregivers have? Are your key question, are your caregivers bonded and insured? Very important. And of course, there's many traditional questions that anybody could find, but I want to say, I would say take the time to make the calls to a few different reputable companies and ask the questions that are important to you and your personal needs and your situation at that time. And most importantly, I think that you need to feel a connection with the person that you're speaking to, the person that's running this company that's going to be working with you. You need to feel that it's the right fit for you and your loved one, that you're looking for care.
Yeah, Beth, I think you bring up some very, very good points, because you're right. You do have to find that right fit, and that fit might be many things. Someone who could provide the proper care. There may be religious concerns, language concerns, and these can all be brought up. Are there minimum hours and so on? So you're absolutely right. Ask around, but it's got to be the right fit for you. Beth, I wanted to ask you, and this is probably, you see this, I'm sure, all the time, and it's a little sensitive because I'm sure at a certain point in time where home care at home is just becoming too much. It could be too much on the individual, too many hours that are required. So when should you consider a potential transition to an appropriate senior living community when maybe it's just not working out at home?
Okay, well, you know, although BethCare is a home care provider, I truly do believe that a senior living community is the right choice for a great majority of seniors. And I would say the best time to consider this is when your family needs relief from stress, because keeping an elderly person that needs care at home could be extremely stressful. So I think that's the first thing you need to look at, is your health and the situation that, you know, where are you in your life, and how can you manage all the stress that's going on? So, and then there's also, you know, sometimes an elderly person needs a more secure social environment. So that's one thing to consider. And also, the most important would be for me when location and proximity become a challenge. Family visits are always a priority. And nothing trumps that, because family visits provide quality of life. So it is super important that their family, their children, their neighbor, whoever's important to that individual in their life must be able to visit on a regular basis. So I think proximity would be the key reason.
All very logical and heartfelt, the way in which you presented heartfelt responses to what we need to understand and think about. I'm going to switch gears a bit because I have the benefit of knowing you personally, Beth, and you started, as we said, 12 years ago with BethCare and this service, and it's grown quite a bit. Could you just tell us a little bit about how you started? Because I remember being back there looking at your business cards and your logo. So it's so impressive what you've done.
Yeah, well, you know, it started with a need. I mean, I can get into, a lot of people have the story. I took care of my mother. I took care of my grandmother. I took care of my father. We all have our story and we all have our journey. But the bottom line is, I did take care of my mother, and I learned a little bit about dementia. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm knowledgeable because I took care of my mother. I'm going to tell you I went on this journey because of my passion for dementia when I learned about it. So as I started to educate myself in the field of dementia, I realized that it was a natural for me, and I felt comfortable with it. And that's how my journey started. And I keep my little business small and boutique-oriented because I need to have hands-on with every single client. That's what's important to me. So, yes, there's a demand out there for care, but there's also a level of care that is needed out there, and that's the most important thing to me.
It is absolutely, and so well said, Beth. Corrie and I both know you, and it came across. You are very heartfelt. You bring the human aspect to it as well. So we want to thank you very, very much for coming on to Life Unrehearsed. How can people find out more about BethCare?
I would say our website is probably the best choice. It's www.BethCare, BethCare.com.
All right. Well, we want to thank you very much, Beth. That's Beth Cytryn, founder and president of BethCare Senior Services. You know, sometimes the CLSC is there, but sometimes it's not enough, and people have to look for some additional home care support. And Beth and her whole team at BethCare Senior Services does a great job. And Beth, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Corrie, what do we have next week?
Next week on Life Unrehearsed, believe it or not, we are celebrating 5 years of Life Unrehearsed. So Matt and I are going to be sharing some of our most memorable guests and some of those interviews, but we're also going to hear from some guests who have very inspiring stories about actually taking their tragedies and then using them to support others in their time of need.
Yeah, very much Life Unrehearsed. And who would have thought, Corrie, 5 years, we're going to be doing our 250th show. So that's going to be next week on Life Unrehearsed. So thank you very much for tuning in. And as a reminder, for all your inquiries or assistance with navigating home care, seniors, residences, or downsizing, it'd be my pleasure to help. Our services are completely free. Call me at Lianas Senior Transition Support at 514-622-8074 or lianasservices.com. Many thanks to our technical producer, Ben. Great job. And you can listen to Life Unrehearsed here on CJAD 800 every Saturday at 3 p.m.